Good evening, everybody. Let's keep this real short, real sweet. All right. Many of you should already know this, especially if you follow me. But like with most videos you posted on YouTube, you never know who's going to stumble across it. And so, Disney. When I was young, we had the VHS tapes. I remember. I think one of the first Disney movies I watched was Bambi, and it was just man, it was sad. And then I think I watched Pinocchio, and then what was that? Fox and the Hound, Robin Hood. And to be honest with you, a lot of those cartoons seemed, fairly innocent, just like telling a story. A lot of these were adoptions from a book, right? So a lot of the stuff that Disney did in the beginning, it wasn't like Disney created it. It was just an adoption from a book that had been written. And just like with anything, right? We always talk about the seven pillars of society. All right. We talk about how Satan will use education, entertainment, politics, whatever he can to push demonic agendas. And so this is the thing, like television and movies, it's not the same thing that it was when I was a kid. You can't just assume like, uh, you know, I remember watching Saturday morning cartoons, and it was nothing too crazy that I can remember. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, GI Joe, Care Bear, Strawberry Shortcake. I don't think we were allowed to watch He Man because the whatever the little skull guy and some of the darker animals, but it was nothing like I felt like my mom could let us sit there and watch it, and she didn't have to worry about us being brainwashed. Nowadays, these people are strategically targeting our kids through entertainment. Even some of these viral kid shows that you see on YouTube that are super popular, that are getting millions of views. I know there was some stuff with I think Miss Rachel and the LGBTQ, Gracie's Corner. There was some questionable things. So you can't just let your kids watch stuff. You got to be very careful. And so, even with this latest thing with Snow White, it just seems like they want to go woke, right? With all of these different shows, and they're trying to push these little messages in there. Now, I did see this recently. I think it's interesting. Right after the election, I haven't looked too deep into this, but it says Disney introduces first Christian character in decades. So let's read it. LGBT outlets have expressed concern and dissatisfaction over Disney's inclusion of its first overtly Christian character in nearly three decades in its recent series Win or Lose on Disney Plus. The character, a middle school softball player named Lori, appears in the show's premiere episode Coach's Kid, where she is seen praying to God for strength and guidance as she prepares for an upcoming game. Dear Heavenly Father, please give me strength. I just want to catch a ball or get a hit. Lori, whose father is the team's coach, says, I promise it'll be good and I won't do that thing again. And another scene, Lori prays, please help me be good. I'm going to train so hard. According to the Christian Post, Lori marks the first time a Christian Disney character expressed a prayer since the 1996 Disney film The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The film features a song titled God Helps the Outcasts. All right. Conversely, a number of LGBTQ outlets have expressed outrage concerning Laurie. The introduction of an explicitly Christian character is fairly I can't pronounce that word right there. I've never seen that word before on its own standing. But the context surrounding the show and Disney alert. Isn't it interesting how they want inclusion in everything, but not Christians? You know, they say that they're all about inclusion and accepting everybody, but not Christians. Isn't it funny how they always disrespect um Christianity, but not Islam, not other gods, but whatever. So let's get into the whole Snow White thing. Real short, real sweet. Just want to play you a couple clips if you hadn't heard about it. It is bombing at the box office. All right, let's see. I think it costs, I had looked this up a little while ago. How much does it cost to make the movie? It costs $270 million to create this movie. That's the production budget. That's crazy. Before another 100 million of so and marketing costs. So it's actually kind of crazy when you think about how much money we spend on making movies. Now, the opening numbers It says Snow White brought in 87 million its opening weekend globally with just 43 million domestically. That may not mean much out of context, but compared to other slew of recent live action Disney adoptions, that's definitely in bomb territory. All right. So it's not doing great. Now, let's pull this up. Let's just play the clip from this actress. Somebody went and watched the movie. They gave a summary of it, and I thought it was really interesting. Wanted to put it on my
The
platform.
cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird. So we didn't do that this time.
So no prince or a different kind of prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because like we cast a guy in the movie,
Right.
Andrew Burnap, great dude.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby. But it's one of those
That's
things.
so true.
It's an inner journey that she goes on to find her true self.
Why not just make a new story not called Snow White if you're going to do all that? Like, why not just stay true to the book?
And she meets a lot of people along the way that make the journey really incredible. I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. If I'm going to stand there.
Why would you be in something that you didn't like or you're not a fan of, which clearly she wasn't? She thought the original was weird.
18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess. I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed.
Go vote blue. And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button. I don't need your business. Thanks. All right, guys.
So clearly you see she has that entitled, attitude. It's similar to like what a lot of these NBA players have. I noticed Michael Jordan was talking a couple of years ago about how they're so entitled and all the money that they're having. So, it's like, it's a privilege. Like your job is making movies. I'm not saying that it's hard work, but then she's very woke. She's very liberal. She's saying all these, woke things, and it's strategic. They picked her for a reason. They're pushing these agendas for a reason. Sometimes it's more subtle. Sometimes it's just, you got to just be careful what your kids watch. And so obviously I wasn't about to watch the movie. Some of the old Disney stuff, like I said, the original, Fox and the Hound. I remember 101 Dalmatians, them old VHS tapes. Them stories were pretty cool. And like I said, most of them were adoptions from books. But this young lady right here, pretty smart lady, she gave a take after watching the movie, and it just kind of made me like laugh. Like this is like a straight woke fest.
I watched Snow White, so you don't have to. Let's get into it. Now, first things first, Snow White gets her name not from the fairness of her skin, as we obviously know. Rachel Zegler would be a miscast in that sense. Instead, she gets her name from surviving a snowstorm.
My father told me long ago I braved a bitter storm of snow.
Her father and mother are king and queen to a utopian communist society. I'm not joking, guys. Everybody shares and is mindful of what each person is getting, and we spread our resources evenly, which is where this idea of fairness, as Snow White is the fairest of them all, is really presented in the film. Snow White is the fairest of them all because she has these communist sensibilities to share all resources with the farmers that till the land, and she got those sensibilities from her mother and her father.
One day, my prince will...
So I don't think there much more needs to be said. Like, the communist stuff, the woke stuff, they're putting in the films, they're trying to brainwash your kids. And, just something as simple as that. Like you think, oh, we're just going to the movies. It's the same thing with the news. When I was growing up back in the day, the news was to report the news. Now the news job is to force a perspective or an agenda on you. So, bottom line, as we've said before, be careful of what you watch, be careful of what you allow your kids to look at. And you just have to be very active, with the music, with the television. Satan is using all that stuff, trying to brainwash the next generation. It's in the education system. Everywhere you look, we just have to be on point. You have to be talking to your kids and really just be on it, because they are trying hard and they are sneaky with it. www.marcusrogersministries.org if you want to support what we're doing here in Chicago. I mean, they're doing better with the Christian movies, guys. Honestly, Angel Studios has been killing it. That new David series on Prime, maybe get the family together, watch some of that stuff. But we got to be vigilant because these people are dedicated, they are passionate, and they are delusional. So, yeah. Have a good evening, y'all.